Hi, everyone, and welcome to 4DMethod, the 4D and Wakanda user group. Today is April 12th, 2017. If you're watching this at a later date, it's not actually April 12th. Do not be confused, and welcome to our future viewers. On our agenda today, we'll talk a little bit about 4DMethod. We'll get 4D news from Brian Young in San Jose. We'll get Wakanda news from ZHANG Liu, also in California there in San Jose, I believe. We'll get the 4D iNug e-Digest from Ed Hammond right here in Chicago, lovely Chicago. We'll do a little what's to know in the knowledge base, a review of recent tech notes and tech tips in the 4D knowledge base. I'll be handling that. We'll also get a Hey 4D from yours truly, where I mention something that might be nice to have in the 4D development environment. And we will have our special topic called the WebFileManager4D from Tom DeMeo. We'll have general questions and answers and talk about our next meeting. So again, my name is Brent Raymond. I organize the 4DMethod, 4D and Wakanda user group. I do 4D and Wakanda as a trade and have for many a year, and I'm always interested in what people are doing with 4D and how it's deployed out in the field. If you'd like to check out more about 4DMethod, go to 4dmethod.com or email me at 4dmethod@gmail.com. 4DMethod is a user group that I organized to bring together a scattered community of developers and users from all over the world. We stream all the meetings, as we are now, via YouTube Live to allow people to participate from anywhere. And we record the meetings and presentations in the meetings for you to watch again at later dates. So what we're trying to do is to provide fresh new content and demos and show off everyone's work and to give you some exposure for all of the neat things that you're doing with this platform. So let's kick it over to Brian Young, the Technical Marketing Manager at 4D, for some 4D news.
Okay, can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, good to see everybody here. So a little bit different this 4DMethod meeting. We don't have the camera on the entire room. We don't have the whole crew in the office. Jim and four others are out on the road finishing up the East Coast 4D World Tour. Several of them are coming back tomorrow. So I just want to go over a couple things quick. We've had a couple releases since the last 4DMethod meeting. Brent is going to go over the V16R2 release a little bit in a couple slides. We also have the beta test for V16R3 out for partners, and if you're a partner, please go take a look at that. There's a number of new standard actions and styled text areas for 4D Pro, tabbed windows for macOS Sierra users if you're in design mode, and more commands for objects that we're continually adding APIs for. You can read about both of those on the 4D blog. Almost all of these features get covered on the 4D blog, and it's a great resource for you to be able to search or just to discover what's coming out and coming down the road. Please go there when you have the chance. I'd love to get some feedback. Is anybody here on the in the meeting reading the blog regularly? Are you getting any value out of it? Just go ahead and put it in the chat. Thanks, Ed. Also, I need to pull up the Reddit, and I'll take a look there. If you have any questions about the blog, or if there's anything you'd like to see there, I'd love the feedback. Oh, Tom, come on, take a look. So the World Tour, that's the big event of what's going on right now. We have completed 3 cities on the East Coast. We've got 3 more coming up on the Midwest, West Coast. Let me get my notes up here. Of course, Chicago, we had an incredible crowd there. I am really amazed what Brent was doing, knocking on the doors, telling everyone to come out. it was the largest crowd we've had at any of the 4D World Tours yet. And we also had a huge crowd for the training day on the second day with Ad and JPR going over things like how to bring apps up to the modern age, both in the architecture, taking advantage of multi-threading or taking advantage of all the new patterns and objects, as well as UI. We got a lot of great comments about what an eye-opener the techniques were for creating more modular UI. So if you have not yet signed up for the World Tour, please go take a look at the event site, events.4d.com. Take a look at the subjects that are being covered on both the free first day and the paid second day. We think that there's a lot there for everyone. We've had a number of people talk about it on the iNug. We asked if you guys are enjoying this, please share what you like about it. And Justin Will, Jeff Kane, Ed Hammond, Dave Porter, Bob Miller, and Chuck Miller all gave their views on what the World Tour is like for them and what you'll get out of it. During the World Tour, we're also unveiling some information about changes to the partner program. Not only do we have something for bronze partners, our lowest level, we are adding tech support to the bronze partnership. We also have 2 levels above our previous high level of gold. We are getting quite a bit of feedback and interest at the higher level for offering our largest customers some more options on how to support them. And that's what I have right now. Brent, I'll kick it back to you.
Cool, thanks, Brian. That's pretty neat about R3 and the tabbed windows. I'll be checking that out here soon. Just wanted to say again, it was great to see everybody at the World Tour here in Chicago. I had a real big group, and it was it's always neat to see JPR's opinions on how to do clever 4D programming and how to approach the preemptive processes and worker processes that we now can take advantage of. A lot of neat tips and tricks that were gone over in the road show. I won't tell them all, but you guys and gals in Denver and Long Beach and San Jose have a treat ahead of you. So just in the Chicago road tour, I did a little demo of a new 4D mobile and Wakanda application that been collaborating with the 4D professional services on, and it was nice to show it off a little bit. All of the website work has been developed by ZHANG Liu, and we are going to share an in-depth view of the project and the application in our next 4DMethod meeting, which we'll talk about in the schedule later on. But yeah, it's real exciting, very exciting stuff for the museum here to have a web front end that's tightly integrated with our 4D server client server in the back end. So 4D Mobile really made that incredibly easy for me, and then the 4D professional services provided the rest of the development work to make the responsive web page, single web page application available for everyone. So pretty cool stuff. We'll be talking about it more in our next meeting. And as Brian was mentioning earlier, recently we had the 4D v16 R2 release, which has, among other things, the final 64-bit product line, which is real exciting, that the clients can now all be in 64-bit as well. So if you have some heavy processing going on in clients, that'll be a huge improvement to the weightlifting power of your clients. Has the virtual machine snapshot support, which is a hugely important feature for anyone using virtualization. And furthermore, ease of use, smoother users. Thank you for for the keynote, that keynote compliment. Thank you. And experience. I think that's supposed to be smoother user experience. I'll have to talk to my keynote person about correcting this. Yeah, but if you'd like to check out more details about the next release, the next R release, go to the link below, which is easier to get to if you download these slides from 4DMethod. But go ahead and check it out. There's a lot in there in R2, and I'm excited to see what's in R3 now. 16 is shaping up to be very interesting. So now I'm going to kick it over to ZHANG. He's a technical services engineer at 4D, and he'll share some of the big news at Wakanda.
Hey everyone, Sean here from San Jose. Thanks, Brent. So Ricardo's still on the road, so I'll be delivering the Wakanda news today. We just came back from NGConf in Salt Lake City from last week. This is our third time in the Salt Lake City. We are the gold sponsor of this year. It was a tremendous success at the event. We did lots of demos. As you can see in the picture right here, we actually get a presentation this year. Ricardo went on the stage, gave a presentation about Wakanda to 1,200 people. We had a raffle. We raffled out a nice iPhone 7. You can see that's the picture on the right shows the winner. So we connected not only to developers, but turned out the NGConf is full of community organizers, meetup owners. So we had a lot of buzz on social media, on the community. So we are very excited about the result coming out of it. We're really excited what's going to happen. So you can expect more voice for Wakanda. You can. We actually started a lot about activities on Twitter as well. So if you missed out what happened on NGConf, feel free to check out our Twitter. It is Wakanda Soft. So you can see pictures, videos, what we have done in NGConf. So moving forward, in time for the NGConf, we released our Wakanda 2.0.0. So this is the biggest major update since 1.0. We released on community version on last Monday before NGConf, and the enterprise version on Friday during the NGConf. So these version came just in time for both NGConf and Angular 4. It had the biggest feature includes there's node support from Wakanda's backend, and we have added more pro connectors on top of MySQL. We also added an ODBC connector, so you can use connectors to connect to MySQL database and ODBC, just like you use 4D Mobile. And the biggest thing of that version is the virtualization layer. Basically, on top of pro connectors, you actually can build your own connectors using so you can basically write code and connect to any data source in the backend and still get the same model presentation in Wakanda. That you can connect to multiple data sources unlimited at the same time, and you become the developer have the control of what data, where data comes from, where data goes. So, and we also, as I mentioned before, we are also having the support for Angular 4 and latest TypeScript 2.2, and these have both on server side and client side. We now have our server side supports a coding TypeScript as well. And on top of the new exciting features, we're actually rebuilding our community as well. As we've been doing on Stack Overflow, as we have been doing on other fronts, we also started this new Gitter community. Gitter is like a chat room for developers. So everyone from the engineering team, including Ricardo and I, will also be in the room. So this is like informal chat room. Any questions you may have, technical, non-technical, or just ask about, hey, what we guys been up to? Hey, I want this in Wakanda. So feel free to exchange your ideas and throw anything at us. And yeah, everyone from the Wakanda team will be on that Gitter platform. So again, feel free to join our download Wakanda 2.0. Feel free to join the Gitter chat room, and feel free to tweet at us at Wakanda Soft. And that's everything from me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, ZHANG. That's pretty exciting. That you know, they're skipping versions now with Angular, and Wakanda is keeping right up and integrating the latest coding changes and capabilities into the Wakanda platform. It appears that Google skipped Angular 3 and went straight to 4. It was so good. So I'll have to check out what the new capabilities for that are. And that's real exciting that that Wakanda 2 is now you're able to integrate other database sources in a 4D mobile-like approach and treat them as a native local data source from the Wakanda server. So that's some pretty powerful stuff there. Right, so thank you for the news. Next we have the 4D iNUG e-Digest, where Ed Hammond reviews some of the recent discussion on the iNUG.
Thank you, Brent. We're going to start right off. It's been hasn't been very long since our last meeting, so we'll get right into a debug log reader from Alexander Heinz, who expanded the work of Justin Carr, and these links that are on the 4DMethod website will take you right to the discussion on Nabble. And this particular debug log reader has a link to the tool on Alexander's site, so you can get at it there. There was a thread on host structure in a component, and a reply to that said, you really want to see this. Nigel Greenlee, and he has following, I highly recommend following the links to the Dropbox video. He shows access to the method editor through code and what you can accomplish using your own and building your own tools for the design environment. Some very interesting stuff. A discussion on call form, some notes on a command that's easy to misunderstand. Discussion by David Adams, Justin Carr, and others on call form and call worker commands, and reveals how some of the folks are using them already and what they're discovering. Some interesting references to unit testing and testing tools. And my comment on this thread is go to the World Tour 2017, find out from the source how 4D envisions you using these commands, because it may not be exactly as you think they should be used. There was a discussion from Randy Engel on 4D version 15R5 versus 16, and that led to some discussion about understanding the differences between the R releases and dot releases, and it includes a link to a forum post by Thomas Mall that explains how and where bug fixes are done and the testing cycle that 4D uses. Valuable stuff there if you're wondering what's in an R release versus a dot release, and how to tell the difference. There was a request from Tom Swenson to include the patch constant in HTTP request command, which leads me to the conclusion that you should check and see what the constant values are. In this case, the built-in 4D constants were just text values, and he could put in the patch command as he wished. I'm sure 4D will probably be adding that to their constants in the future, since it was so easy to do. We had a question about passing JSON to 4D from Kirk Brooks, and that was a discussion about understanding how form variables and JSON can be passed in and out of 4D. A lot of what we're doing now is communicating with other systems, and it's really important to see which commands in 4D interact with web servers, web services, web areas, There are little quirks between all of them, and Miyako was part of that discussion. For announcements, HMCal 7.1 is available for 4D v15 and 16, and a version 2 of Danny Bobien's 4D v14 and 15 code analysis component. Both of those are out now. And that is it for the Ed Digest.
Thanks, Ed. As always, a wealth of information available out there on the NUG, and you know, it's a discussion amongst people who really live 4D development and have a just an extensive library of knowledge in their head that they can work through why things are the way they are and the nuances of coding 4D and the new features and discussion about the new features. So check it out. And also check out the links that Ed highlights each meeting. They're all available on the 4DMethod website under eDigests, and there's a lot of good learning you can do there. So thanks, Ed. Next we have What's to Know in the Knowledge Base, where I talk about a few of the recent tech tips that stood out to me. If you see any that you really think are something unique, then let us know and we'll try and cover it. Not sure if my slides are coming through right now, but let's hope they are. Can anyone see my slides, by the way? Okay, good. Yeah, first of all, we have one from ZHANG, actually. Format data for display in 4D mobile. Now, I've been using 4D mobile in the past year for City Light, so this one was very interesting for me. But you can actually set data formats for external data sources from several different directions, among them from within the Wakanda data store viewer. You can set the data format at the attribute level, which the browsers will react to for the different formats that you put on there. You can put different formats for the same attribute, which is in the end the same source field on the 4D side or wherever your data source is coming from. So it's a very interesting and thorough description of how you can go about using those data formatting capabilities with 4D mobile. Next we have using keywords to autofill a search for a command. Now I'm not sure if that's perhaps it should be wildcards because well, it's keywords and wildcards, I suppose. But as you can see in this small picture here, you can use the @ symbol in the same way that you can use @ symbols in queries to make a custom sort of autofill. So for instance, you can do @form @ and it will bring up a list of all the 4D methods, and for that matter your own methods that have the word form in the method. So that's just a really interesting trick that that's available and has been available, I think, for according to Kirk Brooks since at least 13.6 has been available in the 4D method method editor. So again, some of those little time savers can really add up if you use them in your coding. So next we have also a utility method to obtain hierarchical list box information on mouse move, so that it's again this is free code, just a utility method and there's all kinds of interesting and very useful utility methods available in the knowledge base. One of these days I'm gonna put them all into a component, and you'll have probably what would be hundreds of utility methods that are available just from the knowledge base alone. But this one in particular gives you information about what item in a hierarchical list box that you're hovering over, and then you can react to that, like changing the color of the line, or in this example, the flippy triangle that you're using to collapse the hierarchy. But it's pretty clever, and it's a good demonstration of how to use the new commands that are available to control your list box appearance and functionality. Next we have Hey 4D, where I shout out an idea for development for the 4D environment. Currently, if you're developing on a server, I don't know, there are a lot of teams out there where you have several different developers connecting to a development server, and like all good databases, well, there's record locking and method locking and form locking. So that if you try and open up a piece of code from that someone else has open, and that someone else has it's locked, well, it just says, well, this is locked. Sorry. It would be really neat to say request access instead of turning around and saying, hey, can you close that window if somebody is actually in the same office with you. Otherwise, you're going to have to Slack them, IM them, Gitter them, call them up. I don't know, send a Raven, something like that. But as usual, it'd be a lot cooler if you did be able to request access to a particular piece of code in the team development environment.
I'd rather have you just turn around and ask me.
Or go to the coffee shop to find you, so you can say, hey, go back to your desk.
That's right, yeah. Ed, unlock your computer. So anyways, thanks everyone for your suggestions on the Hey 4D topic items. If you'd like to just put a request up directly to 4D, go to this link in the 4D forum, and there's a tech tip link here for actually how to vote using the stars for which ideas you like the best. We have a list of the Hey 4D suggestions, some of them anyways, up on the 4DMethod site with some links to the feature requests in the forum as well, if you'd like to vote on a specific Hey 4D idea.
Yeah, I love it. Netflix has gotten rid of the stars, but we still have stars here. Right?
We have a lot of stars. We're all stars here, and hence the stars in our requests. I think that's what that means, right? Yeah, that's my understanding, anyways. So on to our special topic, WebFileManager4D. Joining us today, we have Tom DeMeo, who's in Essex, Massachusetts, just north of Boston. He's been working exclusively with 4D and related technologies since 1998. He has extensive experience working with a wide range of client-server applications, and also specializes in design and development of web-based applications which use 4D as a back-end database. That's a really great way to go. That's been my favorite approach. Tom is also an experienced Wakanda and JavaScript developer. He's even authored a JavaScript library called SVG Layout. You can check it out from the Waltham Software website, which has links to it. Today he's here to talk to us about the WebFileManager4D. And with that, I'll kick it over to Tom.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so what I'm going to do today is show you a code library that I've been working on that will provide developers with a quick, easy way to implement remote file management into your application. So what do I mean by that? Let me show you my screen. Can everybody see a browser?
Yep.
Okay. This is the basic look of it. As you can see, the users would be given a familiar File Explorer style layout that we're all used to using on our desktop. But they'll be managing files and folders that are on the application server. And the developer will have full programmatic control on an instance by instance basis. You could use this to just do simple admin functions and file transfers, or you could do something more complex and integrate documents into the workflow of your application. It's a really basic elemental set of functions that you can use in a lot of ways. And it's very familiar to your users. I mean, as you can see, it's got the side panels and then the detail panel, just like users are used to on their desktop. This interface is browser-based, and the view is based upon a UI framework published by the company Webix. And I'll show you Webix's website here. For those of you that aren't familiar with Webix, they're one of the larger web UI frameworks out there, and it's a pretty well established company with substantial development and support resources. And one of the things that caught my eye about Webix is, and I'll show you this, in addition to their standard JavaScript widgets like most UI companies have, they also have something they're calling complex JavaScript widgets. And one of them is this file manager tool that I'm going to be showing you today, but they have a number of other ones, and you know, they call them complex widgets, but I would call them views. They're made up of several different widgets to form a kind of a cohesive point of view. And they, in addition to the file manager, they also have a Kanban widget. That's something I might tackle down the road. They have a spreadsheet and a mobile scheduler. So let's see. My contribution to this project is to provide the client-side and server-side integration. One of the advantages of having Webix behind this is a lot of the more complex elements of the development, the browser detection, and the look and feel of the actual page itself. You've got a lot of resources behind it and a lot of support resources behind it. This was written in V15, but it's probably going to be compatible down to V13. I'm going to be checking that out in the next few weeks, and I'll let everybody know. Just to give people kind of a sense of what the state of the library is, I consider this to be an alpha version. The core functions are all working and performing pretty well. The reason I'm showing it to people now is I feel like it's a good time in the development of this view to get some feedback from others. So if anybody wants to contact me and discuss any ideas, I'm open to suggestions. I want to make this a good product, and I'm hoping later in the year that I'm going to be able to release it as a product. Right now, one of the possibilities is some early testing indicates that it might work well as a component where you could just drop it in and go. It'll probably be licensed on a deployment basis. I'm looking at $200 per server instance at this point. And I'm also looking at the possibility of building on top of it and providing some standalone products based on the library. Okay, so why don't I show you how it works a bit. This view, I'm just exposing a couple of folders that are part of the demo. Probably not a good idea to expose your web folder in general to users, but just for the purposes of this demo, hope you'll forgive me. The folders that you see are, well, let me reload it because a session may have ended since I've, okay, so this is actually being hosted on a virtual server that I run my website from. So this is a pretty good live approximation of what kind of performance you're going to see. I'm not running it locally. So these folders have been exposed in the code, and if I were to drill down onto them, they're loaded dynamically, and this allows for a lot of speed and allows you to manage fairly large file trees. If an individual folder has 3,000–4,000 elements, it can handle it. It might take 5 or 6 seconds to load, but it's quite quick. So as you can see, when you drill down, it processes pretty quickly. The tool also has a typeahead search, so and it's context specific, so it'll search inside the root folder that you're in. If I was to type file manager, as you can see, it redraws really quite quickly. And again, this is a hosted server at the moment, so it's not something I'm running locally. If you're going to upload something, there is one way drag and drop from your desktop onto the browser. You can't do it in the other direction because that would be a security violation, but you can go from your desktop onto the browser. So if I was to take a couple of files and drag them onto the browser, they upload that quickly. And as you can see, this is a window with my, that's on my server, and these 2 files are up there already. So dragging and dropping works in one direction, multiple files. You can just drop stuff right on there. You can also copy and paste. It's contextual, so you can copy. I could drop this into this folder, paste it. It's instant. Again, if we looked in here, you'd see the file that I just put in there. You can also move things. So let's go back. I could take this file and move it just by dragging it right in there. Again, it works quickly. You can also delete with just a click. So let's see. And as you can see, it's responding on the server already. So just to show you how simple, right now, how simple it might be to install this. Oh, actually, hold on. Let me show you the WebArea. One of the nice features about this is I've also been able to build it into a WebArea. So in the demo, if you get it, you just look under demo, WebArea demo. This is an included WebArea right now. It has all of the same features that the browser-based one does. But the nice feature about this is the way I wrote it. It senses that it's being run from a file, and as a result, it does all of the communications and all of the processing over client server and not over a web server. So you can embed this into your client server applications, and it'll work without running a web server. So that could be extremely useful as well. As far as installing it, as of right now, it's just these methods here that are required. I've set it up so it's in a home folder under WFM4D in that namespace. So you could just open up 2 versions of 4D and drag it right over. You'd have to configure your web server somewhat, and you'd also have to, depending upon what type of web server you had, you might have to do a little bit of extra integration work. But if you're using the 4D web server, it's extremely simple to get this working. Okay, so just the last couple of items that I'd like to show you. When you're using this, there's not a lot of things that you have to work with. The main thing is the permission handler. So this is a piece of code that gets called every time a new instance of the file manager is called. What it does is it provides permitted root folders that the directory is going to show. And you can make this a lot more complex than this is. If you want to evaluate based upon the user that's involved, based upon the context of the call, whatever you want, as long as you deliver an object that's composed of an array of permitted routes, you're good to go. And then for the remainder of the instance, it'll remember what those permissions were. And if you're wondering, that's what this number is. This is just a UUID that contains that identifies the specific instance and maintains context. So as a developer, you just would need to put this in. You would have to also, in this case, if we were to take a look at the methods, under database methods, I'd also need to put in just this code here. And it'll just pass everything forward and handle it. Again, if you've got a more complex web setup than this, maybe if you use an active 4D, there may be some little bit of integration involved, but not a lot. And then the only other piece of code that you typically would have to deal with if you felt like it was the event handler. What I've done is set up a handler where it passes calls both before and after every one of the actions that are in the file manager. So if you're going to get a call to this method before and after the thing loads, and then every action that the file manager does. So the before action will give you the request object, and the after action will give you the response object in the event object. So that's pretty much it. It's meant to be fairly concise and straightforward. It's not meant to be a big rambling application. The idea is that it's, you know, a basic fundamental component of development, and that it should be useful and pretty obvious where you can deploy this kind of thing. But it's I tried to make it as flexible as possible and deploy it in a variety of different conditions. And you'll have all of the extensibility of being able to work with the Webix framework. You might be able to add things to this page if you're ambitious enough. Just to give you a little bit of an idea, Webix has a deployment, a deployment type of licensing. To just license this particular widget probably would run you a little over $300 if you chose to develop with it. If you use this as is, I'm the developer of records, so you probably wouldn't even need to buy any licensing for that. You can deploy it as is and just work with it. But if you wanted to, you know, it's a complete web framework. You could add things to the menu here, you know, to any of this stuff, to the contextual menus. You could put a button here. You can do whatever you want. It is just a web page. So I don't know if anybody has any questions, but I'd be glad to answer anything that anybody has.
Yeah, it's Dennis here. Do you consider OEM model like we have thousands of servers deployed?
Oh, sure. I mean, just so you are aware, I'm primarily earn my living as a contract developer. So you know, I'm going to be flexible with this. This is the first product that I've tried to publish, so I'm open to a variety of conditions. You know, I'd be glad to consider something like that. The licensing that's outside my control is different. You know, you'll have to negotiate that separately. Thank you. But it's certainly conceivable that I could do that.
Thank you.
That's pretty slick how you were able to integrate it into the client environment without, now you mentioned just if I could clarify, without the need to hit it against the 4D web server, everything would go on the client server connection. Is that what I heard, or?
That is what you heard. And the way I was able to do that is that inside the framework, I basically set up a method, you know, a JavaScript functionality where there was a proxy method there and a proxy function there, and if it's being called from a file, instead of running an AJAX request, it runs one of those $4D object requests and does a method request. And I tried to set up my wrappers so that it was requesting the data in exactly the same way the AJAX request was. So if you've got any questions about that type of technique, this might be a good database for you to download and take a look at it. If you want, I could even show you, but let's see. Am I still sharing my screen?
I can make that happen.
Let me see if I can find where I'm doing that.
That's a pretty crafty approach, though. That's neat. That way, people wouldn't have to interfere with their web code if they're serving web calls currently.
Can you see this code here?
Yep.
Okay, so this is my AJAX post method or function that I'm using, and that I've hooked up to the framework for Webix, and it calls this every time. And if the location is a file, it's running a 4D method on desktop connection.
Could you make the font just a little bit bigger?
Oh, sure. I think I can do that.
Thank you.
I don't know if everybody can see that. I don't know how many people are familiar with the $4D object, but it's another way to execute JavaScript in a inline in a web area. By using this syntax, I'm actually executing this method, and I'm getting back this response object from the method. So if we were to look over into 4D, if you'll see, I've got an on connection method, and I've got an on desktop connection method, and this sort of normalizes the call between the two different approaches. This approach handles all of the AJAX requests. This handles all of the requests directly from the web area, but it's all doing the same thing, and it's routing the same requests to the server. So the technique is basically to just create two different methods. This is kind of a simulation of the on connection method, and it kind of normalizes everything so that these file request methods that I'm sending over to the server, they all work the same way. So you could do this in a variety of different contexts, and in a lot of cases you can get your JavaScript to behave the same way, and as long as you just make your responses identical and your requests identical, you should be able to get it to work. But it's nice because you know, paying for a web server in some contexts is pretty pricey. It's not worth the trouble. If you can transfer files over client server, that's great.
Yeah. No, that's definitely it's nice to have options. Have you had any experience with or seeing if it functions differently on Mac and Windows platforms in the web areas?
I've done a reasonably limited amount of testing on this. I mean, I've spent several hours testing, but it hasn't gone through the kind of rigorous testing in a variety of environments that you'd want before you'd release a product like this. But so far, so good. It's behaved pretty well. I'm impressed with Webix's coding. I have not run into lots of like what the heck is going on type stuff, and the framework behaves pretty well in the web area. But that's my next step with this. I mean, I consider this to be at a stage where I want feedback and want to try and now tighten it down and make it rock solid so that somebody can trust it, frankly, in their application. And I've got a couple of my clients are going to be willing to use it in admin functions and for some basic functions. So I'm going to stress test it over the next month or two, and hopefully it'll behave. But it's limited so far. There are still a couple of minor things that I still need to fix, but nonetheless, the performance is pretty good. It loads quite quickly, and I've tested it with 4,000 or 5,000 lines, and it still loads in less than 10 seconds.
Wow. We have a question from Ed here. I think he's muted, so I'll just blurt it out. You're using the internal rendering in the WebArea, the integrated WebKit?
I believe so. We can check that. Let's see.
Soon to be Blink.
Yeah, that's true. That's I noticed that they're changing that. So here's the WebArea. I am using the integrated WebKit. Yes.
Okay.
And the code, you know, here is pretty simple. You know, if you wanted to see what it looked like, that's all I'm really doing in here. And then everything else is being handled in the JavaScript.
Yeah, that the execute JavaScript function is just that's one of those commands that's just a gateway to tons of different functionalities and approaches.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's got tremendous potential. WebAreas, you know, I think it's been a little unfortunate that the first few iterations out, it knocked people back a bit. And people didn't trust it probably as much as they should, but I think it's getting to be the time when we can start to push it and start to integrate some great new stuff, because there's an unlimited amount of development going on out there, and there's a lot of great UIs being developed, and we can all benefit from taking advantage of, you know, another framework that's outside of 4D. I mean, just Webix alone, one of the things I'm hoping to, because I've developed a little bit on here, I'm kind of interested in this Kanban widget next. I'm coming after Atlassian next. So, but, you know, these types of things are pretty useful, and there's nothing like it in 4D right now.
Right. No,
But I'd encourage others to take a look at this. I mean, I think it's an area where if you have good basic JavaScript development skills, you can do a ton with very little work.
I have a couple questions about the what the widget's capable of.
Sure.
Does that do any sort of image preview or icon preview?
Oh, yeah, I wanted to, there's one thing I forgot to show you. I'm going to build more into this, but if you double click right now, I've actually built in an ACE editor into this. Just a basic implementation of it, but one of the things I expect to do down the road is expand on this. I don't know if anybody's actually ever worked with an ACE editor before, but it's a freeware web implementation that's not that far off from what you can accomplish with something like Sublime Text, and it's got a ton of things that you can add in and manage with it. So in terms of just basic text editing, this thing works quite well, and I've actually built in some tagging so that it's color coded. But I'm going to be able to do more. I'm going to add in, that's an area that I expect to do some development before I release this, to set up some preview stuff. And I'm going to investigate whatever's free out there that I can do. I'd be glad to integrate in. But that's a good question. I neglected to show you that. But even just the text editor, I think, is pretty useful.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That opens up a lot. So this complex widget, as they call it, is made to show file systems.
Yes.
I'm not too familiar with Windows file system these days, but on the Mac, there's everything available through Spotlight to view the file system through tags and basically searches. Is there flexibility in the system to expose things like that?
Well, this is an abstraction, so you can do whatever you want. If you respond to the request with data, you're going to get that data shown on here. This does not have to be really, these don't have to really be files. So just so everybody understands where this is all coming from, on the server side, I'm doing a lot of LEP requests, launch external process requests, and I'm just getting data that way. One of the nice things about this is if you want to hack it, I'm kind of open to it being open source. I like the idea of people taking it and extending it. And if you can respond with the appropriate data in the appropriate format, you can have it show up. So, you can make terminal style commands and get back data and get it to work. You can put anything into the detail area you want. So I think it's something that somebody that wants to, they could absolutely do it.
So you could really make a virtual file system view structured the way you want it to be seen by the user, even though it's not that way on the file system.
Absolutely. As long, this is just data that gets a response. There's a specific set of actions that are going on here, and they're not, they're just requests and responses. This is a pretty standardized set of data requests, and it's, before I release this, I'll document it pretty carefully what you're responding with, but it's not particularly difficult to imagine getting something else back from any variety of sources. I could even picture somebody not really even going to the file subsystem, maybe just getting data off of a table.
Now, just to be specific, this doesn't have to be the file system that the 4D server is running on, right? It can be, you can serve the web page from 4D, but point the web file manager at another file server?
Yeah, as long as the application server has, access privileges to a folder or file subsystem, it can serve it. It's not, where it is. Anything 4D can read, it can do. Performance is a consideration. How far removed it is might matter. So you'd have to test that, but it's just whatever 4D is as a server is capable of responding with for data, it can do. So if the server can read the data off of a file subsystem, it can respond.
No, that's actually really neat because obviously you can control the access server side. You don't need to to give access to the machines, the client machines or the browsers where people are connecting from, and that's a huge plus. Yeah,
that's really the whole ball game as far as this is the access control. I mean, if you don't, you got a per instance, you can control it. You don't have to set it in some sort of configuration and walk away from it. Every single request can be managed dynamically. That permission handler, it's called when you instantiate any of these views, and you can do whatever you want on a per instance basis. So I think I agree with you. I think there's a lot of potential for doing a lot of different things with this.
Yeah, no, it's neat that you have it nicely organized for people to plug in their own callback methods, which are appropriate for their own setup and environment and data. So that that's any facilitation of helping people integrate it into their own systems is going to be huge.
Right, and to the best of my ability, I will be really flexible about supporting this. I don't have any rules here. This is my first attempt at publishing something. I'd be glad to help. Obviously, I have to make a living while I'm doing it, but I'll do the best I can to support this and to and be flexible about engineering different solutions. I've been working with this for about 6 to 7 months, and I feel like I really have a good command over the environment and the different things you can do with it, but I'd be glad to keep digging. That's really why I took this on, was to extend my skill set. I really didn't have any expectations of it being a commercial enterprise. So anybody has any good ideas, I'd be glad to work with them, especially if I think that it'll pay off. I'd be glad to do it.
Cool. Let me just check our Reddit discussion page here to see if there's any particular questions from there before we move on. And also the YouTube chat window. I might have missed any of the YouTube chat questions, but now is a good time to ask it if now that we're discussing topics. But well, if you have anything else, feel free to ask or email Tom directly. Again, let me bring up his contact information here. You can contact him and see his LinkedIn through this link, or you can email him directly at DeMeo@WalthamSoftware.com. So thanks, Tom. Thanks for the demo, and we'll be excited to see what other Webix libraries that you turn your attention to next. It's good to have once you learn those skills for how to integrate frameworks like this, whether it be through a WebArea or PHP or otherwise, then that the world is kind of your oyster. So excited to see what you do next.
Well, thanks. Appreciate it.
Yeah. And now on to our next meeting, to discuss our next meeting. Again, you can see our schedule at 4dmethod.com/schedule. In our next meeting on May 24th, we're going to take a deeper look at City Light. It's a web application that we developed for the Art Institute of Chicago here. It's called Going 4D Mobile at the Art Institute of Chicago. ZHANG Liu and myself will be presenting. I have a feeling it'll be mostly ZHANG because everything was really easy on my side with the 4D Mobile, and what's most interesting is how he was able to easily connect to that data source and construct an Angular app with Node.js and all the works connecting back to our main client server. And then on July the 12th, we'll have Tim Penner join us from 4D to show off a demo of his 4D Acme client. It's a Let's Encrypt client in native 4D code for automatically creating and renewing your encryption keys. And Tim will have a lot more to share about that. But it's really something that should be of interest. It's all a free service, and all of the code necessary to connect to it will be shared by Tim. There's also a couple of interesting keynotes, knowledge base tech notes that Tim has written on that subject in the recent past. So check them out and join us on July 12th. Again, if you'd like to get on the schedule to show off some of your work in Wakanda or 4D or 4D Mobile or both, we have open dates on August 23rd, October 4th, and November 15th. Yeah, we have one more question I think we were going to address from Tim Nevels. Tim, did you want to ask that directly, or should I just go ahead and read your question?
No, I can ask the question. I've started working on a team developer project with V16 with a couple other developers and accessing it over a wide area network with a 4D client, 4D server. And so since it's going to be a V16 project from the very beginning, we said, let's go 64-bit. So we loaded up 64-bit everywhere and started using it. And then we started running into some issues with the new network layer with some disconnects. And well, we first thought that the performance was a little bit slower than we expected. Anyway, long story short, we had to abandon using the new network layer and stop using the 64-bit client, drop back to the legacy network layer and the 32-bit client. And that gave us a little performance boost over the wide area network, and it eliminated some of the disconnect issues that we're having with 4D client connected to the server. So I just wanted to throw out, maybe people can chime in on the group chat. Anybody here using the new network layer? And are you having any issues with it? Is it working great? Just kind of curious if, you know, in this particular project, just checking that little box on the server to go from legacy network layer to new network layer was like night and day. Problems all disappeared, and we haven't checked it back on again to go back to the new network layer. So I'm just checking to see if others have any experience with that, and also if v16r2 has any changes that might impact this new network layer and its, you know, performance, reliability, etc.
Hey Tim, what platform is your server on?
It's a Windows platform for the server, and clients are Mac.
Okay.
So I checked with Tim Penner about the R2 question, and as far as we know, as far as Tim was able to answer without knowing the specifics, there's no reason to expect that's going to change it. But definitely submit a case if you haven't already.
Well, I from what I've heard from 4D in the past is that everything internal, the internal 4D databases, they're all running v16, and they're all using the new network layer, and everything's wonderful and fantastic, and there's no issue with the new network layer. So I was, you know, I don't know what to do about something like this, but I just wanted to see if anyone else was having any issues with the new network layer, Mac side clients, because again in this case, it's a Windows server, obviously 64-bit Windows server, and the Mac clients.
I think you may want to go back through some old NUG messages, especially Jeff Kane. I know they've got a large client server installation at Sweetwater. And
yes, he recommends don't use new network layer, go back to legacy.
Right, and I think it is particular to a Windows server, and because we're running 64-bit Mac server here with the new network layer with primarily Mac clients. Now they're all 32-bit, but we're not seeing any issues with that.
So you're using the new network layer with a 32-bit client on Mac?
Yes.
Okay. So,
and with a Mac 64-bit server, v15.
Okay, great. Well, I was, in this case, we wanted to just be an all 64-bit platform, you know, both client and server side. So might indicate 64-bit Mac version of the network layer having issues, since I'm hearing that the 32-bit is not. Okay, so I thought that you could only use the new network layer on Mac if you used a 64-bit client on Mac.
Nope.
Oh, okay. So in our situation then, where we've got a 64-bit Windows server, we could turn on the new network layer again, and we can switch between 64-bit Mac client and 32-bit Mac client. Is that right? We can just switch between the two?
You're gonna have to experiment with that yourself. But our experience is we're running 64-bit Mac server, v15, connecting, because v15 only had 32-bit Mac clients. They connect just fine with the new network layer.
Oh, you're talking v15, not v16.
Now, we have not gone to v16 for other reasons.
All right. Well, my specific query is v16.0, not v15, v16.0. So maybe it's a v16 issue. Okay.
We have another question from YouTube here from Valentine or Vantine IT. Just curious how many clients you have in this scenario. How many clients are you serving with in your setup? I believe, Tim. This is directed for you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Can you repeat that question again?
Sure. Someone's asking. Vantine is asking on YouTube, the YouTube page. Just curious, how many clients you have connecting to the server in this scenario?
This is team developer. So we've got 3 developers connecting to the server because we're doing development. This is not a deployed solution. This is all interpreted, and we're developing code. So a lot of time spent in the design environment, flipping back to the the user runtime environment for testing and such.
Right. Okay. Well, that's good information too. That it's not compiled. This is just in the development environment itself. You're getting disconnects.
Yeah. If you stay on for a short period of time, you don't notice it. But if you try to stay on for hours at a time, we've run into issues. And again, this is wide area network across the internet. This is not people internal on a LAN. Okay.
Okay.
And I'd also like to say that I also would love to see the feature request you had about lock methods and lock forms, where you could request that unlock. I remember in older versions of Team Developer, if you opened up a method and it was locked by somebody else, there was a little padlock icon.
That's still there. It doesn't, if it's still locked, it doesn't notify anyone to, maybe try closing it. Someone's trying to get this method.
If you click on it, does it unlock it?
In 15, at least, yes, it does. If someone has closed it.
Okay.
If it's now accessible, then that clicking the lock, but you don't know when to click it. You could just keep on clicking it. You can, like, gorilla click it, but you're not going to get access.
Okay, yeah, that would be a great feature to have in Team Developer, to be able to have that box come up and just have the retry and notify buttons. That would be super useful to save a trip to, like you said, to Slack or to Messages or the phone to call the guy up and say, would you please get out of that so I can change it?
Right, yeah. All right, well, there's a +1, 4 stars.
Well, Tim, I don't understand. Don't you have 2 27-inch monitors and all that stuff open already?
Yeah, I've got plenty of stuff open, but sometimes you got to get in there and tweak something, and somebody else has got it open too. So, Team Developer is kind of a different environment if you work that way. You've got to remember to keep your structure window closed, open a method, make changes, close the method. If it's something that could be used by other people, and same for forms, you've got to not have 15, 20, 30 windows open in design environment. If there's potential that other people might need to get in there and fool with some of those methods and things that are shared.
Brent, you're on mute. I'm not sure if you were saying anything.
Yep. Thank you for that. Yep, that darn mute button. Yeah. Question from Dennis. Anyone ever saw such a method, such message in web in compiled mode? I thought it is only for interpreted. We see it in Mac build, but not Windows. The message is it's a 4D var. And a 4D method, what it appears to be.
No, it's a variable, and it just says undefined.
It's a variable. Okay. Yeah. So it's and that's a message that you see in the browser.
Yeah.
Okay. And is the 4D on the 4D side? Are you running compiled or uncompiled?
Yeah, well, if it would be uncompiled, then it's a very natural message, but that's a problem that the server is compiled. And
right.
I could not figure out, like I thought in compiled mode, all variables are always defined. And that's what's strange.
For that process, you might have to make sure that's been defined with a compiler method, just to be sure, and then work your way back from that. they may, the variables may be available, but you may have to sort of instantiate, and that's just my own, stab at the problem. But anyone else have more experience with using the 4D var syntax in your web pages that could either confirm or deny? Well, we can take that discussion perhaps to the Reddit page, or can I suppose respond directly to Dennis, or the NUG or the forums. It's all available. Okay. Well, hopefully you get an answer to that, Dennis. All right. So just gonna close on out by mentioning again that we recently launched our Patreon page. A lot of people have asked me how, other than by participating, how they can contribute. And I want to thank those of you who have considered contributing so far. This has really been an important part of what we're trying to do here. And the Patreon campaign approach is going to be a lot of fun. There's some pretty sweet rewards there if you go check out Patreon. But if you're interested in supporting the group further, head over to the Patreon page, or just keep joining the meetings and commenting on the demos, and that's incredible support all by itself. So again, just want to thank everyone for joining us, and look forward to seeing you in our next meeting. So thanks a lot, and we'll see you later.
Take care.
Okay,
thanks a lot, Brent.
Thanks again, Tom, for the excellent demo. Hopefully you get some interest in that.
Thanks.
Okay. All right.
Thank you, Brent.
All right. Bye-bye.